much. I just learned I'm the editor of the Annuals of Improbable Research. And I also am editor of the Annals of Improbable Research. And 2 or 3 times a year when the mail arrives, I discover I am the editor of the Animals of Improbable Research. And I'm here tonight because it's National Science Week. This year, National Science and Engineering Week. The name of the week is expanding by a word or two every year. You can graph that out and predict the length of it over the course of years if you like. And want to thank very much Imperial College and the BA, British Association for the Advancement of Science, who put together all of National Science Week, and The Guardian, and all of you for coming. We have a lot of people, a lot of things. I'm going to try to talk very quickly and show you a lot of stuff. And I'm going to begin by talking about and showing you some things to do with the Ig Nobel Prizes. Now, I'm going to talk for quite a while until this disappears, which will be somewhere between a minute and 3 hours from now, so please be a little bit patient. The Ig Nobel Prizes we have been giving every year since 1991. We've just recently given out the 16th set of Ig Nobel Prizes. The thing to understand about these, thank goodness, that some people have a hard time realizing initially is these people who have won prizes, they're real. And what we say they've done. We give you lots of documentation. If you want to go and check for yourself, it's up on the website at improbable.com. I'll show you a bit about it right now. This is what it's about. This award, unlike most others, maybe all others in the world, has nothing to do with good or bad, has nothing to do with important or irrelevant. It's just about this, just the one criterion. It's about things that first make people laugh and then make them think. What people think, that's up to them. Now, here is an Ig Nobel Prize being held by an Ig Nobel Prize winner. It's not easy to become an Ig Nobel Prize winner. Every year we get more than 6,000 or 7,000 new nominations. That's in addition to the pool that remains from previous years. And we have to winnow that down to 10. We have a policy in most cases that when somebody is selected, we quietly get in touch with them and give them the opportunity to decline the honor. Very few people ever turn down an Ig Nobel Prize. If you're selected, if you accept it, you get 3 things. The prize is one of them. You also get a piece of paper which says you've won an Ig Nobel Prize, and that paper is signed by several Nobel Prize winners, and you get an invitation to come here. This is Sanders Theater at Harvard University in the US. It's the biggest, oldest, and most imposing meeting place at Harvard. It fits 1,200 people. It's always filled to the rafters on Ig Nobel night. And up on the stage, waiting to hand the Ig Nobel Prizes to the Ig Nobel winners, are a bunch of Nobel Prize winners. This is a picture from the recent ceremony. We had 7 of them up there, waiting to hand out the prizes. And because it's a ceremony where lots of people have to give little speeches, we always had the problem every ceremony has, that everybody has a few extra things they want to say and the night stretches on and on. We no longer have that problem. Here's how we solved it. We solved it with something we call Miss Sweetie Poo. Miss Sweetie Poo is a very cute 8-year-old girl. She sits up on the stage during the entire ceremony. I introduce her at the start of the night. I explain whenever Miss Sweetie Poo feels somebody has talked long enough, she'll let them know. And I ask her to demonstrate. She walks all the way across the stage up to the person who's at the microphone, and she says, "Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored." And it works. We have to get a new Miss Sweetie Poo every year or two because they don't stay 8 years old very long. This is the first Miss Sweetie Poo. Here's the most recent one, who was not quite 8 at the time of the ceremony, so we have some hopes that we'll be able to get a second year out of her. And I'll show you a couple of pictures of Miss Sweetie Poo in action to give you a feel for at least what this looks like. This is Miss Sweetie Poo helping Charles Paxton finish up his speech. We tell the winners you probably got about 1 minute before Miss Sweetie Poo comes to greet you. Charles Paxton and 3 colleagues, all of them British, shared the Ig Nobel Biology Prize one year for a study that they titled Courtship Behavior of Ostriches Towards Humans Under Farming Conditions in Britain. This is Mr. Hyuk Ho Kwon. Mr. Kwon is the inventor of the self-perfuming business suit. And now here are the winners of the 2006 Ig Nobel Prizes. First, the Ornithology Prize. The Ig Nobel Ornithology Prize was awarded to Ivan Schwab and the late Philip May of the University of California, Los Angeles, for exploring and explaining why woodpeckers don't get headaches. This is the beginning of one of their published papers. It should be needless to say, but let me urge you, go to the library, go to the internet, wherever, get yourself a copy of some of these papers. The details often are far more intriguing than just the brief little story I'm telling you. This is Ivan Schwab at the ceremony. This is a woodpecker. Many woodpeckers peck about 30 times a second for hours on end, and as far as anyone knows, they don't get headaches. This is part of the reason why. This is from one of those published reports. The inside of a woodpecker's head is substantially different in many ways from the inside of the heads of at least most of the people in this room. This, too, is from that report. In the days when armor was being built, some of the headpieces were built modeled after the shapes of woodpecker heads. The Ig Nobel Nutrition Prize was awarded to Wasmia Al-Houthi of Kuwait University and Fatin Al-Musalam of the Kuwait Environment Public Authority for showing that dung beetles are finicky eaters. Here's their report. And here's Fatin Al-Musalam. She traveled from Kuwait to Massachusetts to collect her prize. This is a diagram of what their experiment was. They took dung from several different kinds of animals and offered it to the test subjects. Here's some of their data. And in case you've never seen one, here's a dung beetle with a food supply. The Ig Nobel Peace Prize, which some consider the most prestigious of the Ig Nobel Prizes, was awarded to Howard Stapleton of Merthyr Tydfil, Wales, for inventing an electromechanical teenager repellent, a device that makes annoying, high-pitched noise that is audible to teenagers and probably not to adults. He was honored for a double achievement. That was part one. Part two was taking that same technology and selling it to teenagers in the form of telephone ringtones. So they can be getting telephone calls in class without their teacher knowing, but with all the other students knowing that they're getting telephone calls in class. This is the device. It's called the Mosquito. Mr. Stapleton is with us, and you'll be hearing from him directly in a little bit, so I won't tell you too much more right now. But that's him. You've already seen him once briefly. You're seeing him twice, and you'll see the real thing, living and speaking in a few minutes. These are a couple of promotional photos from his company. The Ig Nobel Acoustics Prize. Was awarded to 3 scientists from the US for an experiment they did 20 years ago to try to figure out why people dislike the sound of fingernails scraping on a blackboard. Here's the beginning of their report. It's got an evocative title, Psychoacoustics of a Chilling Sound. And here are 2 of the scientists at the ceremony. What they did in the experiment was, since it's not easy to reliably scrape a number of times and have it be the same sound, they discovered a way to make almost the same sound pretty reproducibly. You know those 3-pronged metal garden scraping tools? They use those and a piece of slate. So since we had them here after they gave their 1-minute speech, we had a demonstration. Since we had 7 Nobel laureates, we got 7 of those scrapers, 7 pieces of slate. We gave each of them good quality protective headphones and asked them to go at it. The rest of us in the hall, the other 1,200 of us, did not have headphones, and I can tell you there is a difference. The Ig Nobel Mathematics Prize. Was awarded to Nick Svensson and Piers Barnes of the Australian Commonwealth Scientific and Research Organization for calculating how many photographs you must take of a group of people if you want to be almost sure that nobody's eyes are closed. Here's some of their data. And here are the scientists. The Ig Nobel Literature Prize. Was awarded to Daniel Oppenheimer of Princeton University for his study called Consequences of Erudite Vernacular Utilized Irrespective of Necessity. Problems with using long words needlessly. Here's his report, and it's a lengthy report. And here is Professor Oppenheimer accepting his prize. The Ig Nobel Medicine Prize. Was awarded to Dr. Francis Fesmeyer for his medical case report, Termination of Intractable Hiccups with Digital Rectal Massage. Dr. Fesmeyer shared the prize with 3 doctors from Israel who, a year after that report appeared, had a patient who suffered from the same ailment. And these doctors in Israel did a literature search, encountered Dr. Fesmeyer's report, and decided to try it. And it worked, which led to their publishing an homage of sorts to Dr. Fesmeyer, which they, of course, called Termination of Intractable Hiccups with Digital Rectal Massage. Here's the first report, here's the second, and here is Dr. Fesmeyer accepting his prize. You may have seen reports in the news over the past 6 weeks or so of an unfortunate teenage girl in Florida who had intractable hiccups. It was reported around the world almost ceaselessly, and almost every report said her doctors are baffled, which could mean at least that perhaps her doctors did not bother looking on PubMed to see if there was a reliable cure. On the other hand, you can understand that perhaps a doctor would run across certain cures and decide not to offer them to a teenage girl. The Ig Nobel Physics Prize. Was awarded to Basile Odili and Sebastian Newkirk of the University Pierre and Marie Curie in Paris for their insights into why, when you bend dry spaghetti, it often breaks into more than 2 pieces. This is the beginning of their report. As many of you know, this is a problem that's simple to describe, but physicists tried for years and years and years to make headway, and nobody much made any until they came along. Here they are at the ceremony, collecting their Ig Nobel Prize, and here's a little bit of their report. It's truly not a simple problem to analyze. The Ig Nobel Chemistry Prize. Was awarded to Antonio Muley, Jose Javier Benedito, Jose Bon of the University of Valencia in Spain, and Carmen Rosselló of the University of Illes Balears. They won for their study called Ultrasonic Velocity in Cheddar Cheese as Affected by Temperature. Here is the beginning of their report, and here's some data. And here are the 4 scientists and a piece of cheese. And I apologize because it's not cheddar. However, we do at least speculate that it has much the same behavior. And finally, the 10th prize we announced, the Ig Nobel Biology Prize. was awarded to Bart Knowles and Roer de Jong of the Netherlands, and affiliated with several other countries and many institutions. Bart Knowles is with us tonight, so I'm going to just briefly describe what he did, and later you're going to hear in some detail from the man himself. What they did was show that the female malaria mosquito is attracted equally to two things. It's attracted to the smell of Limburger cheese and to the smell of human feet. They published several reports over a long span of years. I'm just flashing them by you because you'll see more detail in a bit. And here is Bart Knowles at the Ig Nobel ceremony, where he brought some Limburger cheese and served it. And at the end of the ceremony every year, we ask all of the winners and everyone else on stage to gather for a pointless photo opportunity. That's what you're seeing here. And since we have all these people in one place for this one evening ever, we jam lots of other things into this ceremony. So I'll very briefly tell you a little bit about those. Every year we have a win a date with a Nobel laureate contest. Each of the 1,200 people who buys a ticket and comes to the theater, to the ceremony, has a chance to win a date with a Nobel laureate. What you see here is Roy Glauber, who won a Nobel Prize in 2005. He was the prize. And this is one of our attendants trying to keep Professor Glauber calm in the moments just before the winner is selected. This year, things were a little different. They turned out in a different way than they have in the past. What we usually do is, when you walk into the theater, you're given a printed program. And on a particular page, let's say page 12, there's a picture. But one of those programs has a different picture than the rest of them. So if you happen to get the program with this unusual picture, you'll win a date. Well, there was a printing error. So when we announced it and said, turn to page 12, and if you've got a picture of whatever it was, come on up, they came on up. And not just one, but several winners came up. And then several more came up. And they just kept coming. We also write an opera, a little mini opera, every year about something in science. And tonight we're going to get to see the performance of our most recent mini opera. It's in 4 parts, and you'll see those spread out over the course of this event. These are scenes from past operas, and a very, very quick look at some of the previous winners of Ig Nobel Prizes. A team from Australia won the Ig Nobel Physics Prize for this report. As you can see, it's titled An Analysis of the Forces Required to Drag Sheep Over Various Surfaces. The British Standards Institution was awarded an Ig Nobel Prize in Literature about 9 years ago because the British Standards Institution publishes a 6-page specification for the proper way to make a cup of tea. This is the beginning of the cover page. I suspect that very few of the people in this room have ever read the standard because you can't get it free off the internet or in a library. You have to purchase a copy. And the British Standards Institution will be happy to sell you a copy for about 30 pounds. This won the Ig Nobel Biology Prize a couple of years ago. It's a report called Pressures Produced When Penguins Poo, Calculations on Avian Defecation. What they did was calculate how much pressure must be present inside a penguin in order for this type of phenomenon to occur reliably. The man in black is named Daisuke Inoue. He's from Japan. Mr. Inoue is the inventor of karaoke. And he won the Ig Nobel Peace Prize. The reason it was the Peace Prize is that by inventing karaoke, he invented an entirely new way for people to learn to tolerate each other. If you've ever been to a talk I've done anywhere, you probably have seen this because I can never resist showing this again. awarded an Ig Nobel Prize to George and Charlotte Blonsky, a married couple. In 1965, the Blonskys were granted a patent for an invention which they describe as a device to assist women in giving birth. This device, as you can see, consists of a large round table and some machinery. When the woman is about ready to deliver her child, she lies on her back on the table. She is strapped down to the table, and then the table is rotated at high speed. In the year 2000, the Ig Nobel Psychology Prize was awarded to Justin Kruger and David Dunning, two psychologists, for this report, which they gave the title, Unskilled and Unaware of It, How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments. And the last thing I'll show you before we move into our cycle of music and brief lectures is this. We gave an Ig Nobel Prize in the year 2001 to a man named John Keogh, who lives in Australia, and to the Australian Patent Office, because that year, 2001, the Patent Office granted Mr. Keogh a patent for the wheel. The next Ig Nobel Prize ceremony is coming up in October. It's usually on the first Thursday night of October. You're all invited. If you can't make it over there, you might want to stay up a little late. We televise it live on the web. And if you don't want to stay up late, you can watch it a few days later because we always put the video up. There are 6 or 7 years worth of video. You can see these people accepting their prizes. And I do want to urge you to keep your eyes and ears open. If you know somebody who you think deserves an Ig Nobel Prize, they've done something that makes you laugh, and then a week later you find you're still thinking about it, let us know. You can be anonymous, this nomination. You can nominate yourself. Every year, between 10 and 20% of the nominations coming in are people nominating themselves. Very few of those have won, but there have been a couple. And that's that. Well, now it's time, on this lengthy list of things which we're going to have, to begin our opera. The opera that we wrote this year is called Inertia Makes the World Go Around. And if our cast would come up. It stars Daniel Gillingwater, and you haven't got a couple of singers in your pocket, have you?
I have.
Ah, okay. And Jackie Charlesworth. And Sarah Redmond. And now, here is our narrator, John Hoyland.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Sorry. No, I didn't do that. Tonight's opera is about a boy and his ego and his inertia. This little boy thinks he's the most popular boy ever. And here in Act 1, he's just arrived into town. Right next door live 2 sisters. The boy expects the 2 sisters to come over and play with him. But that may not happen. You see, one sister never leaves the house, and the other sister is always running around. Let me clarify that. One sister is at rest and tends to stay at rest, and the other sister is in motion and tends to stay in motion. Now, let's meet the little boy and his little dog. How he's... Shall we finish? Yes. The boy explains how he's going to get the 2 sisters to come along and admire him, and inevitably the boy, in so doing, comes to realize just how wonderful he is. Let's hear it now.
It's legendary. Girls do not
Bask in my glow. Page 10. I must use momentum. Yes, that's the key. Momentum. I have got momentum on my side. I don't know what kind of stuff this is. Did they mention this one day at school? Perhaps they did. Momentum, 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 momentum. I'm the leader, people follow me. Naturally, naturally. Me, 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 me. Everyone's cup of tea. It takes just one good look for you to see that people follow me. All together now. People follow me. Naturally, naturally. People want to know about me. What I eat when I pee. It takes just one good look for you to see that people follow me.
Daniel Gillenwater. We're now going to have the first in a series of talks. Each of the people who talks, at least most of them, are being given a maximum of 5 minutes, and we want to help them keep to that limit. So I'd like to ask for one volunteer to help. Is there someone here who has a wristwatch and knows how to read it and wouldn't mind coming up here on stage? One person? Great, come on up. Any way you want to get up. And let's see, if somebody could find another chair at some point. Seat, please. First of all, could you demonstrate that you know how to tell time? What time is it?
Thursday?
Yeah, close enough. This is our implement. Here's what to do. When a speaker starts, pay close attention. They have 5 minutes total. When they reach the 1 minute mark, could you please hit the bell once? When they reach the 2 minute mark, could you hit it twice? The 3 minute mark, thrice? The 4 minute mark, however many times that is? And when they hit 5 minutes, just keep ringing. Great, thank you very much. Our first speaker has just won the Ig Nobel Peace Prize. He's joined us today from Merthyr Tydfil, Wales. May I introduce Howard Stapleton.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Mosquito, what a ride I've had over the last 2 years, and the icing on the cake was the Ig Nobel Peace Prize, or as my mother would say very quickly, the Ig Nobel Peace Prize to all her friends. One thing I've certainly learnt about the little bit of fame I now find myself in is watch out for cameras. The device was developed because my daughter went to a local shop, turned around empty-handed one evening because she refused to walk through 4 or 5 lads who had been drinking quite heavily in their teenage years. We, unfortunately, coming across it more and more often. The shop owner knew I was the security expert, so asked about a resolution to his problem and asked about cameras. I said, all you'll end up with is nice pictures of teenagers behaving badly. So I suggested he tried what they have been doing in the States, which was classical music. He thought that was a good idea, but there's performing rights issues. You have to pay a lot of money. I've done this twice, and that's still doing me. Anyway, I experienced as a child a technique called ultrasonic welding to glue plastic together, and I walked in the room, straight out of the room. Factory manager asked me what the problem was, and I said the noise, and he went, what noise? And this has stuck in my mind, and from it became the Mosquito. I put one in a shop. It has worked beautifully. A friend of mine contacted a magazine called The Grocer, and they ran an article on it. It took 3 weeks to convince them that it wasn't a wind-up, it wasn't a story, that it really worked. And I still have this problem, but we'll play it at the end and you'll get some idea and you can judge for yourselves. Sunday came, I had a big smile on my face. Here is the article. The phone rings, GMTV. Can we send a car up for you? Live television Monday morning. Send a news crew to Barry, the shop in Wales where it was installed. I'm shaking. And I said, have you read about it in The Grocer? Said, Mr. Stapleton, we suggest you look in the Sunday Mirror. And there it was. Page 4, Hood Riddance. Including quotes from myself. I'd never spoken to a journalist in my life. Anyway, in the last 2 years, it has been a complete roller coaster, and I was very, very honoured to receive the Ig Nobel Award. To give you some idea how daft it's going, on the way down, I was in a taxi, and I said to the taxi driver, have you heard of this device that gets rid of teenagers from loitering outside shops? I've never met the guy. And he turns around and goes, oh, you mean the mosquito? It is absolutely incredible. And I am very pleased to say, from what would appear to be a daft idea, I'm actually running quite a tidy business now. The other thing which happened, which I never expected, was that it turned into a mobile phone ringtone. All of a sudden, we now have children who sit in their classrooms with their phones that they shouldn't have, bragging to their friends that my phone's ringing. Teacher at the front of the classroom hasn't a clue, and they're all giggling. My kids love it. To give you some idea how bad it's got, one of my daughters at sorry, I have a migraine and my head's going a little funny. They go to this centre and they were being interviewed by the press, and the TV cameras were there. And the journalist turned round to my daughter and said, don't you want to be in front of the camera? And she turned round and said, is it regional or is it national? And that is how bizarre it has got. And I would thank Mark a lot for this great prize. Now we'll give it a play and we'll have some honest people. Stick your hands up if you can hear it. Once I find a way of plugging it in.
See, unplug the piano. If you could. Daniel?
The problem I have with it is I can't hear it myself. It is on.
Turn around and look.
Now, some people accuse me of generating a weapon. I don't think anyone will think it's that, but would you want to sit in here for the next 10 or 15 minutes?
May I suggest you turn it off?
For the mere mortals, that is the noise it makes, but just at a lower frequency. As I said, I can easily speak through it, but there is the mosquito. Thank you.
Howard Stapleton. Although we don't have much time because we have so many speakers, we're going to take a maximum of 2 questions per speaker. So, does anyone have any questions? In the purple.
What do you do about animal cruelty?
Okay, and could you repeat the question, please?
What do I do about animal cruelty? The mosquito is designed to work at actually quite a low volume. Animals hear to 23, 24, up to 30 kilohertz. The reason it's so annoying to those who can hear it is it's right at the top end of their hearing, and also the noise generated is designed to be extremely annoying. A German producer took it to a German Shepherd breeder, and I was worried sick by this. 40 dogs in my unit playing, turned it on, and they all completely ignored it. So, contrary to popular belief, I do like teenagers and I do like dogs.
One more question? Front row?
Originally,
If you could repeat the question.
yes, certainly. Yeah. Has there been trouble with my own kids at school using the mosquito ringtone? No, I'm pleased to say there isn't, because I'm pretty strict about mobile phones at school. I never intended to turn it into a ringtone. I knew it could be done and had done it, but it became apparent that a company in America was turning it into a business. And at the end of the day, I wasn't going to be anyone's clown, so I actually came out with the official mosquito ringtone, which turned into be the biggest downloaded ringtone of 2006. Unfortunately, also the most pirated ringtone of 2006.
Howard Stapleton, thank you very much. Our next speaker won the Ig Nobel Medicine Prize in 2002. He joins us from a distant institution, all the way, not even all the way, anyway, he's here from University College London. How far is that? A kilometer? Here, anyway, here is Chris McManus.
Thanks. No pictures. There we go. Thanks very much indeed. I've got to be fast. My talk's 15 minutes. I did the first 5 minutes the other night at The Guardian, 5 minutes tonight, and the final 5 minutes will be in Cambridge if anybody wants to hear it. I got the prize in 2002. This was the title of my paper. Now, as I'm sure you know, if you want to, you can get any old rubbish published. There's so many scientific papers, and I think that's the explanation here. It was published in a relatively minor journal. And it wasn't a very long paper either. It's actually, that's it in its entirety, 353 words. But the really great thing about it, it made the cover. And this is what made everybody really envious, it's fair to say. Okay. I'm asked a lot of questions about this, and I don't intend to answer most of them. But the one I'm always asked about is why. And there's a very simple answer. I was young, and I had hair in those days. Okay, Mark tells us not to talk about the same old things every year, so I'm not going to talk any more about the paper, really. You're going to get what I'm going to call a scrotal peregrination. Some of the things that have happened to me since I became famous on account of this paper. Now, of course, you'd expect there's many interesting cultural things have happened. And, for instance, I was rung up by an auspicious journal and asked to review an exhibition at the Handel House. Some of you may know it, in Brook Street, very distinguished. And they obviously realised my knowledge of the arts and that sort of thing. And you can see why they asked me to review the exhibition. It was a good exhibition. Those are the castrati, by the way, the tall gentlemen. And that's what made them that way. There's two castratori at the bottom there. I was in the exhibition, there was two American girls in front of me, and one looked at the instruments and said to the other, "They look a bit like nutcrackers, don't they?" And the other one said, "Yes, literally." It was an interesting exhibition as well, because I was most intrigued by one sign at the exit, which said, "Family Activity Area and Display," and I never found out what it was. Now, I'm also asked to review books, of course, given my deep knowledge of a range of topics, and one's always flattered to be asked to review a book, and one assumes they think one's an expert. I was mildly insulted by the book I'm reviewing at the moment, though. Now, the other question I'm often asked is, when people think why, they say how? How did I go around? Because, of course, you can't walk into a gallery and get out your calipers or whatever. And so, now, first of all, I must tell you that medicine has very many sophisticated measuring instruments, and we have one for assessing the size of the testicles. And it's called an orchidometer. And it looks like this. And essentially, you move the hands along until you get a match. I didn't use that. I used what I call the eyeball technique, which works just as well. But it did get me thinking about orchidometer. Well, we know orchidos is the Greek for testicle, but why are these things called orchids? It's not because of the flowers. They're so varied, you can't tell one from another. There's nothing similar. And it transpired that this man, Linnaeus, invented them. And he invented them because, well, the roots have a rather characteristic shape. Now, while we're on botany, I thought you might be intrigued, any of you going out to dinner afterwards may be tempted by the avocado cocktail. And I didn't know where the word avocado came from. Apparently, they were cultivated by the Aztecs. And this is their utterly unpronounceable name. I've tried it several times, and I'm certainly not going to do it in public. But you probably don't know that in the original Aztec, it means testicle tree. And you can see why. Now, I've also found a new word recently, which I thought you may like, because it very much describes what I do in this talk. Okay. I haven't finished. How much longer have I got?
28 seconds.
28 seconds, right. This is very quick, because I want to get on to the most disgusting bit. I came across an article in a German newspaper, really. You'll notice one word in the middle that stands out, scrotum, if you don't read any German. And I'm not going to go into why it's there. I'm missing that bit. But I did, one afternoon, type the German for scrotum, Hodensack, testicle bag, it's very literal, into Google. And I came up with this wonderful album by a German punk band. And it contains one of the best songs I've ever known. Mein schöner Hodensack.
Mein Hodensack ist wunderschön, das hat die Welt noch nicht gesehen. Die Haut ist warm und samtweich. Schön sieht aus mein Intimbereich. Mein Sack ist glatt und kaum behaart. Nicht so faltig, Hosenzart sein.
We will take a maximum of 2 questions. If you have a question, please raise your arm. Just your arm.
That's easy.
Oh, well. Do you see? Oh, yes.
With your great knowledge of the arts, could you tell us which is the sculpture that has the biggest asymmetry in scrotum size?
No.
Is there another question?
But could I ask why you want to know?
Researching a paper.
You know.
That was a question. Is there one more question? In the back, in the red. You.
Is there a question between whether somebody's right-handed or left-handed and which is lower? I agree, it's a very important practical question, and I can understand why you might want to know the answer. And the simple answer is no. But there is a connection, interestingly, between the side of the body on which your heart is, and because most of us have our heart on the left. About 1 in 10,000 people have their heart on the right. And you can either stick a stethoscope on the chest and try and do it in the traditional way, or you just ask them to undress and it becomes obvious. Thank you.
Chris McManus. Our next speaker has just 2 minutes. May I introduce to you Philip Campbell, the editor of Nature.
Thank you. I stand in front of you with due humility, okay? But it's the sort of humility typical of Ig Nobel Prize winners. I'm just the messenger, after all. But nevertheless, the Nobel Prize winners and the Ig Nobel Prize winners have a certain amount of superficial humility, and underneath that, a degree of profound arrogance. And I speak to you as someone who has superficial humility and profound arrogance, after all. We reject something like 9,000 papers every year, and each of those papers has about 5.5 authors on it on average. So that's a lot of misery we cause. And the arrogance that underlies that misery is the fact that we make our own decisions, okay? So that's the downside of us making our own decisions. We're just free to cause as much misery as we want. Nevertheless, the upside of that total independence that we have is that we can go out on a limb. And we have done so on at least 3 occasions, because there have been 3 prizes awarded to papers published in Nature. One you've already heard about. Another one is to do with the perceptions of Italian voters, of Italian politicians, which reduce Italian politicians to rather simple types of character. I can't give you the snappy title that you had in other examples.
The title of that paper, which perhaps you chose, I don't know, was Politicians' Uniquely Simple Personalities.
And Berlusconi was one of the politicians that they looked at. And the other paper was by Jacques Benveniste, and it was a claim that homeopathy works. And those of you who were around at the time will remember it because it caused a furore. What I'm here to do tonight, in the very brief time I have left, is to promote, in a self-interested way, another Nature paper. So a paper that we published in, I think, 2000, showed that the Queen's use of vowels actually evolved between 1950-something and 1980-something in a way that showed that she had spent quite some time fraternizing with the middle classes. And it's all here, okay? There's a phonetic analysis. It's definitely proved in the paper. So does that make you laugh? Self-evidently. Does it make you think? You go away and think about it. But actually, the other thing that makes it a prime candidate is the degree of totally unjustified speculation that we allowed through at the end. And this is not because of any scientific rigor. It was because they wrote rather nicely. Let's be frank about it. And what they said was basically that the Queen was trying, despite all this fraternizing, to defend her position as an upholder of the Queen's English. And I thought, what do they know about the Queen, these authors? So I looked, and lo, they are from the other side of the world. They are from Australia. We publish, I tell you, we show no bias. We publish papers from anybody. So please, you have been asked already to nominate prize winners for this Ig Nobel Prize. Please vote for these Australians. Thank you.
Shameless. We can take a maximum of 2 questions.
Right.
There is one someplace, I just can't see it.
What's your favourite ever paper?
My favorite paper. Oh my God. I think, well, I mean, one of the favorite papers was undoubtedly the discovery of Buckminster fullerene, carbon-60. It was very short, it was neat, it showed that this stuff had been there all along. They just sputtered it out of graphite. It was a wonderful little paper, and it sparked a whole load of work.
It was a letter, in fact.
Sorry?
It was a letter.
It was a letter, that's right.
A, B, C.
You'll get that one
One
day.
more question? Okay, thank you. Philip Campbell. And now it's time for Act 2 of our mini-opera. Inertia makes the world go round. Here is our narrator, John Hoyland. Sorry about that.
So here in Act 2 of the opera, we meet the 2 sisters who live next door to the little boy. I'd better remind you about these 2 sisters. One sister never leaves the house, and the other sister is always running around. Yes, one sister is at rest, and she tends to stay at rest. The other sister is in motion, and she tends to stay in motion. Yet the 2 girls enjoy each other's company. How? Easy. They're always conversing on their mobile phones. Now let's join the 2 sisters, one at home, one running around, as they discuss their strange new neighbor.
Some stupid boy has just moved into the neighborhood. He's got some kind of fixation. He claims that he's got more friends than any king in the nation. He wants us to join the celebration. Fawn over him, he wants us to. Fawn over him, we will not do. Fawn on himself if he wants to. I couldn't keep quiet. I stay at home, that's where I hang out. No way I let him in the door. Let him chase you, run all about. He's like a bull, you're a matador. No way he could catch up to me. No way,
Redmond, Jackie Charlesworth, Dan Gillingwater. Our next speakers, Fiona Barkley and Max Whitby, who won't speak, but will be sitting there speaking in a sense, by force of personality, worked with Theo Gray, who was awarded the Ig Nobel Prize in Chemistry. They are here to talk about that, and since they have been on previous Ig Nobel tours, I've asked them to spend a little piece of their time discussing the prize and a lot of their time talking about something else just as interesting. Here is Fiona Barkley.
That's it.
There we go.
Great job.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Mark, this is the Ig Nobel Chemistry Prize for 2002 that was won by our colleague Theo Gray. Your PowerPoint's playing up again. Very good. Anyway, this is Theo Gray. We can see him here with a silicon ball, which I put in honour of Chris, wherever you are. Theo got the prize. No, it's okay. Theo got the prize for inventing the periodic table. It's an object of true beauty, as you can see, made in many different woods to go with the elemental groups. And if I can go on, you can see there's a whole load of little tiles, you can take them off, and inside there's a little cell that contains a beautiful or interesting object of the element that it represents. Thank you very much. You do that very delicately.
You can wallop it if you like.
Oh, no. So, this all sort of took on a bit of a life of its own, and we went on to produce periodic tables of every shape, size and description. You can see one here. We have another one over here that I'll be delighted to show you at the end of the show if you're interested. Photo opportunity. Mad marketing. Anyway, I should be selling these downstairs later if you want to come down. I have posters, I have all sorts. And we're a bit like the Gideons. We believe everybody should have a periodic table. So, now I'm going to go on and badmouth Richard Hammond, basically. I feel a bit guilty about it. But you'll no doubt be aware of the oeuvre from Sky TV of Braniac. And Braniac went on to talk about the reaction of alkali metals and water. And I'm sure I don't need to explain to anybody at Imperial College what happens with alkali metals and water.
You paused.
Okay, Tickle. Drop the rubidium in the water.
Stand back, everybody, this one's going to be bad.
2 grams of rubidium will only react when our specially designed vial dissolves in the water, which gives John a few crucial seconds to get into our safety zone.
Yes!
Wow.
That is more like it. Only on Braniac do you get that kind of science.
Only on Braniac do you get that sort of science. So that was rubidium. Let's continue.
But I believe we can go one better. There is one more alkali metal we can legally use.
Yes, Richard, cesium, the emperor of alkali metals, particularly nasty, could go off at any time.
And that's it.
Oh, yes.
Brilliant. I like it already. Now, what's that going to do when it hits the water?
Imagine a depth charge in a bathtub.
Fair enough, mate. I'll leave you to it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, John, go for it.
Warning, 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 extreme danger, clear the area.
As our cesium sinks in the water, the rapid generation of hydrogen gas should produce quite an explosion. And it does.
Well, that's enough of that, I think. One of the projects that we've been doing as part of all this elemental madness is to be filming experiments for each of the elements. So we did some alkali metals and water, and I'll start off with some potassium. This is tails, legs, very health and safety. So quite good. So we'll move on. We'll move on to rubidium. And you remember what this did on Braniac? Cesium. Double, More cesium. So you can see we tried pretty hard. Basically, Sky used plastique. It was actually, it all came out in the papers, and there was a big hoo-ha, all very dreadful. Thank you.
Fiona Barclay. Questions?
What's the gold cube?
This is a tragic accident that was had by one of my colleagues.
Repeat the question, please.
Max wants to know about the gold cube. Now, I have to say he's the culprit. So, we were commissioned to make a gold cube by a customer. So this is the wonderfully constructed graphite mould that we made. And this is my dodgy phone photograph of the gold being melted. You can see I'm a little nervous. Poured it into the cube, and obviously we're rubbish because it wasn't tall enough. So we're really cocky by then, and we thought, no problem, we'll just remelt it all, and off we went. We poured it in, but we weren't very careful. Now, I would like to point out that I spent the next 3 days panning the floor sweepers, chipping the walls. Anyway, I shouldn't really give away my health and safety secrets. Anybody else?
One further question with a shorter answer.
Well, come and see my periodic table later. I'll be just too delighted to show you.
Fiona Barclay and Max Whitby. Our next speaker is Dr. Peck Van Andel. Dr. Van Andel won the Ig Nobel Medicine Prize several years ago. He has been on the tour before, so I've asked him to spend about a minute telling you what he did that won the prize, and 4 minutes telling you something else he's been up to. Peck. And he'll have to come over here where there's a microphone. And he'll have to come over here where there's a microphone. And then he'll have to come here. There's a microphone. Okay.
Quod erat demonstrandum. I'm very proud that somebody from nature is again looking at our scan. I had never seen a scanner myself. I worked on artificial cornea in ophthalmology in Groningen. I was at the Congress about science and technology, like this week. Well, this is an example of science and technology. And somebody showed a scan of a professional singer singing an A. And it was beautiful, sharp stoken, documenthaft, as we say in German Dutch, scherp gestoken. And I thought, well, if you can make such a beautiful scan of a larynx, why you should not try to make a scan of another human song, a duet, the so-called coitus. It doesn't work.
Oh, the hell with it. There we go.
And first I laughed about the idea, and then I thought about it. I asked the sexologist and the radiologist in Groningen. They also laughed and then thought. And we said, well, that's something dat moet kunnen. That must be possible. And it was a typically Friday afternoon experiment. We did it on Saturday morning because then the clinic is empty. Clandestine, we called it in Holland black research. The professors were informed and agreed on condition that it should be done clandestine. And the scan shows that it is iconoclastic. You see, that doesn't work either. You see, doesn't matter. You see that the penis is not a, can you go back? Is not a hot dog, but a boomerang. And this can show that the textbooks on this point were hybrid, chimeric, ambivalent. They were partly based on the section room, where the secret organs are without blood, and the bedroom where they are filled of blood. Is that clear? You should have a... No, I don't have time for that. I did send this scan to Nature with a text, with a Latin title, because I realized that it should become a classic. It was refused. Within 1 week, I got a letter. This article is not suitable for publication in Nature. Without any argument, which does not impress a Dutch Protestant like me. So we did the same. We sent it to British Medical Journal. They refused it also with a longer answer. Then we did this case study on 10 couples. Sent it to Nature again. It was refused with a longer letter. Then again to British Medical Journal. And they were afraid that the whole story was made up. The scan and the text. I never thought 1 second about it. I didn't know the word made up. I had to look in the dictionary. And British Medical Journal was so diligent that they asked behind our backs in Holland whether this study had taken place at all. And this was confirmed. And then they asked Dangerfield, an anatomist in Liverpool, to judge this, and he said, it is hardly believable that such a study is undertaken at all. And in the postscriptum, because it was not a scientific argument, he said, this is certainly not a dirty scientific study. And he put it in the Xmas journal, because that is a journal for strange, marginal, a little bit naughty, or méchant, dégoûtant, disgusting research. Next image. The last thing I did is, as a medical student, I wanted to do an experiment on a cadaver. And he said, no, we don't have enough cadavers. So I offered my own cadaver after that, and that of my wife. And then, of course, there was a cadaver. They were just lazy. We call that academic laziness. And later on, I wanted to donate my tissues and organs on condition that the rest of it should, after that, go to the section room. But they said, no, this is not possible. What are you asking us? Dutch law does not permit this. So I asked a student in law, a girl, because I am much more diligent, and she read all the Dutch laws, and Dutch law does not forbid this. So I went to the professor in theory of law, and he said, go to the section room and offer yourself as a total donor. And I did, and now we have a group of 5 Dutch people. They are all intellectuals. There's a philosopher, a mathematician, a biologist, and that professor in theory of law. He is a specialist in euthanasia, and we are all total donors. So when we die, our tissues and organs go to the hospital, and the cadaver, the carcass of it, goes to the freezer. In Holland, they have freezers now. And the only people who are not glad with that are those people who earn their money by putting you in the ground or in a fire. Is that clear? Well, what those 2 studies... The next one. In the Middle Ages, they thought to be able to read in the hand, Memento Mori.
Are there any questions?
This is how I go to heaven, if I go to heaven.
Are there any questions that might precede an answer? It's kind of hard to see from up here, so wave your hand vigorously if you want to ask something. I guess not. Well, thank you, Pek Fernando. Would you like to ask yourself a question?
Yeah, no, I have a question for Nature. Do you regret that you...
No. His turn. Pek Fernando. And now it's time for Act 3 of our mini-opera, Inertia Makes the World Go Round. Here is our narrator, John Hoyland.
So, Act 3 of our opera, the boy comes up with a clever idea. he will lure the girls into coming over to see him. His secret weapon, music. Let's watch as the boy plays a song on his favorite musical instrument.
So this is music.
I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'll charm the sisters with some music. I know girls like to move to music. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I know how funny this might sound, but I make my own kind of music. I doggedly compose my music. I do the dog work on my own. I do percussion using a skin and a bow. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. No other instrument will do. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. I love the sound and so do you. I know you want to watch me play. Girls like to watch me to make music. Well, I'm a kid who makes up music. I know you want to watch me play. It sounds much better right up close. It's intimate, my kind of music. From far away, it's just plain music, but it's a very special kind of sound. There's nothing like a boy and his sound. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. I like the sound and so do you. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. Beat out the rhythm of the dog. I like the sound and so do you.
Samuel Gillingwater and his dog. Our next speaker is John Hoyland from New Scientist magazine. John writes a column some of you read, I expect, called Feedback. Here is John Hoyland.
We'll get the signs up pretty soon, as soon as I get into Samuel. Yeah.
Already did. Too early. I apologize.
Never mind. Leave it. Okay, I'd like to dedicate my talk this evening to George Doughty. George was a bar owner in Lafayette, Colorado, who was arrested for shooting his computer in front of his customers. Now, the reports don't say why he did that, but I think I know. I think he did it because he got one incomprehensible error message too many. Like the one we got about the reader told us about recently, who said a message flashed up on his screen that said, "No error occurred." And then his computer crashed. And I think that something like that happened to George, and he couldn't stand it, and he took out his gun and he fired 4 times straight through the hard disk. And then he hung his bullet-ridden computer on the wall as a warning to other computers. Now, one of the nice things about feedback is that a lot of the column is actually provided by the readers who send stuff in all the time, and this is particularly true when we have a theme going. I'd like to tell you about 2 of the themes that the readers have enjoyed and have contributed. One is called semiopathy, which means sympathy for signs, or over-identification with signs. And this all started when a reader wrote in and said that he felt very sorry for a door that had a sign on it saying, "This door is alarmed." And since then, we've had a lot more examples of this kind of thing, including sometimes some photographs. And here's one sign from the roadside in Yorkshire, and that's pretty scary if you've read Day of the Triffids. The next one, Mark, please. This is from a hotel in County Cork, Ireland, and that's how they keep the occupancy rates going. They recycle the guests. And finally, my favourite, This is the reader who sent this in said he parked by the sign for hours hoping to catch a glimpse of the mythical beast, but to no avail. And now I'd like to tell you about another theme called nominative determinism, which is the tendency of people to gravitate towards areas of work that fit their surname. This all started when a reader wrote in to say that he'd come across a paper on incontinence in the British Journal of Urology. And the authors of this paper were J.W. Splatt and D. Weedon. And I thought that's incredible. I don't believe it. So I rang up the British Journal of Urology and asked them to check out the reference. And they went off, and the woman came back and said, yes, it's absolutely true. And I said, and the authors are really Splatt and Weedon. And she said, yes. Oh, my God. Anyway, and since then, we've had literally hundreds of examples of this. And I just want to give you just one that was quite recent, which reminded me of that first one. This is from the website of the urology team in Austin, Texas, and the description of the people in the team, and one of them is described as follows. Dr. Richard Dick Chop is well known in the Austin community for performing vasectomies. And this is completely true, and if you go to the urology team, you'll see that it's true, and you'll also see that the team's expert in penile prosthetics for erectile dysfunction is Dr. Stephen Hardman. Okay, I'm going to finish with one of my all-time favourite feedback stories. This is about a report that was put out every year by the Department of Trade and Industry called the Home and Leisure Accident Surveillance System. And the report consists of a list of objects in and around the home that can cause accidents. It was compiled by monitoring admissions in the A&E departments of 18 hospitals. So all these accidents required hospitalisation. And then they extrapolate the figures to get an estimate for the country as a whole. I'm going to read you some of the figures for the year 2000, and bear in mind the report only tells us the object and the number of accidents it caused. That's all. Nothing about how the accident happened. Okay, so here we go. Tea cozies, 37. Placemats, 165. Sponges and loofahs, 787. Trousers, 5,945. Vegetables, 13,132. Now, I'd like to now give you some comparisons that will help you get a perspective on all of this. Rat poison, 439. Clothes baskets, 3,421. Meat cleavers, 329. Bean bags, 1,317. Chainsaws, 1,207. Fair enough. But magazines like New Scientist, 4,371. So be afraid, be very afraid. Thank you.
John Hoyland. Questions? Questions? Raise your arm, please. Or sit on your arm. Yes. Please repeat the question.
How did I get the job? People ask, luck. Just luck. I'll tell you what, look, somebody asked me how you can injure yourself with a tea cozy.
How can you injure yourself with a tea cozy?
Good question.
Could you repeat? Now, could you repeat the question?
Certainly. How can you injure yourself with a tea cozy? I used to worry about this a lot myself. And then I came across a possible clue on the Radio 4 program Home Truths. Do you remember it, that John Peel used to do? They had an item on tea cozies in which they produced this statistic. They said that 85% of human beings, if left alone in a room with a tea cozy, will put it on their head. And somehow I think that's the beginning of the road that leads to the A&E department.
That's probably enough questions for now. John Hoyland.
Okay, thank you.
John, Jeff. The debate.
Am I in it again?
Oh, no, you're not. You can sit down. I'm sorry. It's now time. No. Back. It's now time for the Great Inertia Debates. We have 4 debaters. If I could ask them, well, of course I could. May I ask you, please come up, the 4 debaters. Our 4 debaters, and somebody is bringing microphones for them. Great, thanks. If you could join me over at the center here. Our 4 debaters in the Great Inertia Debates are Tony Whitehead, Director of Science and Society in the Office of Science and Innovation for the Department of Trade and Industry. Tony. Bernie Morley, who is Director of Imperial College Graduate School of Life Sciences and Medicine. Philip Campbell, the Editor-in-Chief of Nature. And Fiona Barkley, Chemist to the Stars. Here's how things are going to work. We have 2 debates. Each debate is between 2 individuals on some aspect of the general theme inertia. The first debate will be between these 2 gentlemen, if you'd step up front a little bit. Their topic is fast versus slow. I'll tell you when to begin the debate and when to end it. It'll be about 15 seconds. On your marks, get set, go. Now, please help us decide who is the winner of this debate. If you would please vote by your applause for the person you believe won that debate. If you believe the winner is fast, please applaud. The home team. If you believe the winner, pardon the expression, if you believe the winner is the person who was arguing slow, please applaud. Winner of this round, slow. So please stay here. The next round of the debate is on the topic yes versus no. I'll tell you when to begin, when to end. It's about 15 seconds duration. On your marks, get set, go.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Time!
Typical academic.
Please. Time's up now. And that word's not allowed, any of those words you just used. Please vote for the winner. Help us determine the winner of this debate. If you believe the winner is yes, please applaud. If you believe the winner is no, please applaud. The acoustics are very strange up here. We've got to run this again, and I would like to try something just because I'm curious. I would like to ask them to switch positions. And so we will argue yes versus no.
Can I have the microphone?
No. Well, can you have the microphone?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, you can. But it's going to be real quick. 5 seconds. On your marks, get set, go. Time! All right, let's settle this. If you believe the winner is yes, please vote. If you believe the winner is no, please vote.
Don't send your papers to me.
I've never seen so many careers be ruined in an instant.
Absolutely.
The winner is yes or no. And now the finals. The winner now, the finals. Debate is slow. No. You can use anything else, but not that. Is that yours?
Oh, that's fine.
Ah, okay.
I feel guilty.
Could I have a large prosthetic as well? Of some description.
Of which type?
You choose.
I think we better just get on with it.
Oh, right, okay.
This final debate is between slow versus no. Be 15 seconds in duration. I'll tell you when to commence. On your marks, get set, go.
No. Slow. No. Slow. No. Slow. No. Slow. No. No. Slow. No. Slow. No.
Time! If you believe the winner is slow, please vote. If you believe the winner is no, please vote. It's about even. 2-second runoff. On your marks, get set, go.
No!
Time! Please vote. Slow. No. I believe slow was the winner.
Well done.
Thank you to all our debaters. We have 2 speakers left. Both of them are Ig Nobel Prize winners. Our next winner flew here specifically to give this talk from the Sudan. He is a winner, co-winner of the 2006 Ig Nobel Biology Prize. It's my honor to introduce to you Bart Knowles. Bart?
Slow. Ladies and gentlemen, any one of you who has seen the film Perfume, the story of a murderer, knows exactly what I do. Well, that's not the killing bit, of course. But I'm obsessed with human fragrance, with human smell, with body odor, with sweat, stinky, rancid, foul odors produced by humans. That's my job. And unlike Jean-Baptiste Grenouille, who was the sort of the key player in the film, unfortunately, we do not sniff out our subjects anymore this way, nor do they look as good as she does. Technology has changed, and we are also not in the position anymore to put animal fat on our subjects and scrape off their volatiles and use steam distillation to extract their fragrances. Science has changed, unfortunately, I should say, and so this much less good-looking individual that we put in a thermal body bag, and we let him sweat for 2 hours, and this is the way we collect our volatiles to do research. Now you would ask, and I will say in the last minute, 2 children have died in Africa because of malaria. This is it. This is the most dangerous animal in the world, ladies and gentlemen. It's Anopheles gambiae. It's the most important mosquito in the world transmitting malarial disease, causing between 1.5 and 2.7 million deaths every year. 1 in every 12 people on the planet gets malaria every year. So there is a good reason to do anything. Any research is going to be useful to try and control this disease. This is the picture of the world malaria burden, and this is the picture of world poverty. And I'll go back for a second. This is the world malaria burden. The greener, the more malaria. This is world poverty. The redder, the more poor people are. There's a very clear link there. So this is what I do. We sit in our lab. We have many, many different compounds, and we mix them all, and we try and attract these mosquitoes so that we can trap them and developed monitoring tools. In the last 2 minutes, 4 children have died of malaria in Africa. If we go forward. Okay, sorry. But what they didn't have at that time is good microscopy. We know exactly which neurons in a mosquito antenna are being used to track you down as a person sleeping somewhere in a hut in rural Africa. You know, we can put an electrode in the brain of a mosquito and we can tap down information and we can see exactly to which compound she's responding. In the top here in the blue you see a gas chromatogram of the compounds that you extract from a human foot, a smelly human foot. The bottom part, the red line, you see the response of a neuron of a mosquito inside her antenna of a female. And you can see that for certain compounds, for certain peaks, that there's correspondence. So we get an electronic signal from the female showing that she's indeed recognizing this compound. Unfortunately, we've got more than 400 compounds. So which are the ones that a mosquito is using? I should add, in the last 3 minutes, now 6 children have died of malaria in Africa. Again, to do anything to try and control the disease is worthwhile doing it. So when I started my PhD, I started off in a rather unconventional way. I put a naked individual under a bed net, and I released mosquitoes into the bed net, and I was scoring where the mosquitoes were landing and taking a blood meal on that person. That's rather unconventional. But what it showed, and this is really important, what it showed is out of 100 bites, which you see here, superimposed on an individual, for 4 different species, is that one on the left, the green one, had a preference for biting the face, and our African mosquito had a strong preference for biting the foot and ankle region. And that was intriguing. 2 insects belonging to the same genus have a completely different preference for biting certain parts of the body. So, foot odor, and of course we should have known it all along because it's mosquitoes, you see? All this research would not have been necessary because it's mosquitoes. A joke my brother gave me last night. When doing that research, I found some remarkable statements in the literature that is available. First of all, I found cheese smells after feed rather than the reverse. Whoa, that's intriguing. Think about that. There's a Dutch word, it's called tenenkaas, which literally means toes plus cheese. That really, you all know that smell, I don't need to go into it. And thirdly, that bacteria involved in cheese production may originate from human skin. Whoa, that was fascinating. So what we did is we went to the local cheese shop and asked the lady behind the counter, can you please give us some of these really rancid smelling cheeses? And she didn't blink an eye. She gave us a whole series of cheese and said, oh, this one is particularly bad. We took them back to our wind tunnel, we started doing research, and sure enough, we found that you can attract the African malaria mosquito, Anopheles gambiae, with the smell of Limburger cheese. And why is that? It's because the similarity between those volatiles, thank you, 10 children now, is very strong because the same bacteria that you find on the human foot is the bacteria that are also used for inoculating the cheese to produce these compounds. And we also submitted our paper to Nature. And it was reviewed, which is half the job done normally. And so the comments came back and one of the reviewers said, it's interesting cocktail party talk. And that was the end of our paper in Nature. Anyway, then it went off to Parasitology Today, and they published it, but it came out in the April issue of 1996 on the 1st of April. Believe it or not, this really happened. So, thank you very much for your attention.
Mark Knowles. I'll mention one extra fact that we learned about after this prize was awarded. That this line of research has continued to receive funding because they've been getting a number of interesting and useful results. And I think it's the most recent round of funding. It wasn't long ago. They got, what, about $8 million?
8.2.
$8.2 million from the Bill Gates Foundation. So.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill.
Make your own Microsoft joke. Are there any questions for Bart? In the back.
Is there any link to the bacteria inside the mosquito? Is that? The issue here is that the bacteria that you find in between the human toe cleft, in the human toe cleft, is called Brevibacterium epidermidis. The bacteria that I use for inoculating the cheese to give it its specific flavor is called Brevibacterium linens. Two very closely related bacteria have the same physiology, utilize the same resource, and produce the same volatile. So what to us smells like, smelly cheese is to mosquitoes exactly the same story. And it's a very unique human odor. I think that's very important. If you have something like carbon dioxide, which is present in the breath of animals and humans and all sorts of hosts, if a mosquito has a preference for feeding on humans, which this mosquito has, then it needs a very specific human volatile to respond to. And human foot odor is something that you won't find anywhere in the animal kingdom. We are the most smelly primate on the planet, believe me. Orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees don't smell as bad as humans do.
That's a provocative statement you make.
Yes.
Is there a final question? Yes.
If you can't get Limburger cheese in Africa, what other cheeses are suitable?
Could you repeat the question?
If you cannot buy Limburger in Africa, what other options are there? I can tell you that Bayer Company, when I defended my thesis, Bayer representatives were sitting in the back of the audience and they got hold of a copy of my thesis. Within 3 weeks, they repeated all the work I did in 4 years. And of course, the Germans, being German, they found another cheese. And of course, it was a German cheese that did exactly the same job. It was a Hüttenberger Mainzelkäse that did exactly the same job. Then the Americans in Florida, they took out cheese and they started working with cheeses in the US. There were people that took cheeses to South America, especially after our Lancet paper. People started using cheeses everywhere. And people thought, okay, well, I need the cheese and put it somewhere in the corner of my tent, not realizing that if you have the cheese there, you're just attracting more mosquitoes. You're not diverting them from you because you've got cheese on your feet anyway. Yeah? So it needs a bit of thinking. The ultimate goal is, and we've identified all the compounds that are coming off the cheese, so we can just pull the chemicals off the shelf, we make the blends, and that's what we're using to attract the mosquitoes.
Bart Knowles, thank you very much. And finally, the thrilling conclusion to, is this working? Yes, to tonight's opera, Act 4 of A Boy and His Inertia. Here is our narrator, John Hoyland.
Thank you. Despite the boy's wishes, the girls never did visit him. But the boy cannot stand being ignored. So now, at last, here in the concluding act of the opera, the boy does something drastic. Something he thought he would never do. He goes over to the girls' house and, yes, he talks to them. All the neighborhood children gather round to see what will happen. Let's join them.
I'm a popular guy, a real popular guy, us popular guys, we're smart and we're wise. I know you agree. Follow me.
Charles Worth, Sarah Redmond, and our narrator, John Hoyland. We have one final speaker. Kees Moeilijker joins us today from Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Kees won the 2003 Ig Nobel Biology Prize. I've asked him to talk for about a minute about what he did to win the prize, and for another 4 minutes about what he's been up to since. Here is Kees Moeilijker.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a museum-based ornithologist, and I'm always on the lookout to collect birds, interesting birds. And in the end of 2005 in the Netherlands, there was the annual domino toppling event, an event where they want to topple as much domino stones as possible. They put up 400,000 or maybe 4 million of these domino tiles, I'm not sure, and then a sparrow flew in. I thought, and the sparrow was shot because it toppled over 23,000 domino tiles. It was world news in England, in the US, everywhere. And I said, that's the sparrow to collect. I asked for the sparrow. But who is responsible for a dead sparrow? The sparrow was confiscated by law because it is illegal to kill sparrows in Holland, I think in England as well. So I had to apply, asked for it in our legal system, wrote a letter, and I said, can I please have this sparrow? Can I have it for my collection? And they agreed. I had to go collect the bird in the freezer of a local police officer. That's me with the sparrow. Doing some paperwork to get the sparrow out of the province. And then we decided to put the sparrow on display, because it's a very famous sparrow called the domino sparrow. This is the German part they wrote. This is the domino sparrow just before we had to skin, we had to mount it. This is the skinned domino sparrow. This is what's inside the sparrow. We found out that it had an empty stomach, and that's probably the reason why it flew into that building. And this is the mounted domino sparrow. Because, and you may know that famous sparrows are quite rare nowadays. I asked around because I thought this domino sparrow must have some companions in this exhibition. We need some more famous sparrows. This is Paul Sweet from the American Museum in Rotterdam, holding the oldest stuffed sparrows in the US, 1873. This is my colleague in Sydney, Australia, with the Freedom Sparrow, the sparrow that flew from Los Angeles, California to Sydney, Australia on a 747 and was immediately killed by customs upon arrival in Australia. It was on the 4th of July, it's Independence Day in the US. Here's one from British stock, the world famous cricket ball sparrow, killed in Lord's cricket grounds by a ball in 1933. Very famous, came also to the exhibition. You can also come and see this exhibition, runs till May 14th. And here are the sparrows you can see there. Okay, now the reason I came here is winning an Ig Nobel Prize. I don't like birds like this. As you know, I prefer them like this, stuffed. The museum I work had a new wing a couple of years ago. It's made of glass, and that was a real bird killer. The only thing I had to do was listen to loud bangs against the window, go down, collect the bird, and stuff them. And on an evening, I heard a loud bang against the window. I went out to see what happened. Here's a mallard duck. It's a dead one. It flew into the window. Up here is a live one. Then this happened. The live one raped the dead one. I'm an ornithologist and I knew something was wrong here. I said to myself, this must be homosexual necrophilia. So I went up to my office, took my notebook and my camera, sat down and made notes. I could do this because this rape took 75 minutes. It took me a few years to decide to publish this. This is my office. That's where the duck hit the window. And that's where I was when I watched this.
We'll let this one go.
Oh. Roll up a chin.
I was asked afterwards, was the dead duck really a male? I checked it. This is a rare photograph of a duck's penis. So it was definitely of the male sex. Well, then I got the Ig Nobel Prize 2003, especially for you people. Here's the duck. Same duck. It's a good one. Okay. After winning this Ig Nobel Prize, my life changed quite a bit. People began sending me things having to do with ducks. There's one. There's another one. And I'm always keen to see some interactions of birds with windows. And one of my latest projects is a blackbird in the Netherlands that flies against the window of an ordinary home day in, day out. Month in, month out. I got an email this morning, the bird is still doing it. It's doing it for 2 years. It flies into the window every day since 2 years. And I have, if you don't believe it, I have a small piece of video to show you. And please take a look at it. And maybe you know what's wrong with this bird. The music is of a funeral on TV.
Soms wordt voorafgaande aan de begrafenis de geloofsbelijdenis uitgesproken, een tekst van Evenherden die alle kerken verbindt. Laat ik dat nu mogen doen in prins Bernhards eigen manier, ontleend aan een toespraak die de prins hield op een kerstviering in 1953, waarin hij zijn geloof op een heel persoonlijke manier verwoordde.
Kees Mulliker.
Dank je.
We have time for just 2 questions.
Why doesn't the blackbird get a headache?
Why doesn't the blackbird get a headache? I've been in contact with Gustav Schwab, who got the Ornithology Prize this year, and we're teaming up.
Okay. Repeat the question.
Okay.
You know something? This is going to be webcast, and I believe the world ought to see this. Would you mind coming up here and repeating that on the microphone?
I don't know how common this phenomenon is, but apparently it's uncommon enough to where this warrants my recounting a story of just a nuisance over coffee. But for about 6 months straight, while I was living in Massachusetts, there was a bird. It was the same bird. He flew into my window every morning around 8 a.m. until I moved out.
Okay. Congratulations.
It was great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Case. Okay, we're just about done. I've got just a handful of little pictures to show you. And then we will call it an evening and go downstairs and get some refreshments. I'd like to talk to you afterwards. I live in Massachusetts. I'm wondering where that bird is now. All right, just a couple of words about improbable research. I run this magazine called Annals of Improbable Research, and it's about the same kinds of things the Ig Nobels are about, things that make you laugh and then make you think. And I'm mentioning it for several reasons. I hope you'll read the magazine. I hope some of you will think about writing for us. But the biggest reason is that the heart of the magazine is citations of research published around the world in any field. And there's a lot. If you limit it just to science, that's still a lot. There are more than 20,000 science journals being published right now. I don't think there are many people who read every one of them. And when you get outside science, the numbers grow just staggering. If you run across something that's really eye-catching, please let us know. Here are some examples. You can, I won't bother reading them, but I think after tonight you get a feel for it. I will read this title of a report in the University of Chicago Law Review called Mental Decrepitude on the U.S. Supreme Court. And it's a history throughout the 250 years of the court of, well, mental decrepitude. We also publish a little bit of original research, and I'll mention just a very few. This made the news around the world a number of years ago, 3 years ago, I guess. It's titled, Kansas is Flatter Than a Pancake. This is Kansas, this is a pancake, and this is evidence that Kansas is flatter than a pancake. We also published this by Scott Sanford, who works at NASA in California, called Apples and Oranges, a spectrographic comparison. Most of you are aware or dimly remember that you can take any kind of substance and burn it, and then if you look at the colors in the light, you can tell what chemicals were in that thing you just burned. So that's what he did. He burned a little bit of orange, a little bit of apple, he compared them, and he discovered that when you do a proper scientific comparison of apples and oranges, they're virtually identical. Feline reactions to bearded men. We love to publish things like this. People have seen in microscopes, telescopes, eyeglasses, whatever. If you have any photos like this, send them, please. And here are a few covers. This was an article on what's known as the last mile problem in data transmission. And it is literally true. They did the calculations that in most cases today, the economics and the logistics all work out that it's cheaper and faster to send large amounts of data on a CD towed by a slug than to send it over the communications lines most of us have into the buildings. This was our special painting issue. This is our special anatomy issue. The cover story was on the anatomy of centaurs, based entirely on observations of statues and paintings. And every year, one issue is a special Ig Nobel issue, and you recognize Ivan Schwab with his hat. And the final thing, an announcement I'd like to make, that at long last, we're about to have an online digital version, and there are to us three remarkable things about it. First, it's fully digital, which is very useful should hiccups occur. Second, it's really cheap. And third, if you are in a school or run a school, it's really, really cheap for about 13 pounds a year, a school, including a school this size, Imperial College, or even bigger, for 13 pounds, one subscription, you can authorize everybody in the place, students, faculty, staff, to read it. So I hope that you will think about subscribing. That's all I brought to show you. I'd like to ask all of our speakers and our musicians just stand up for a second and take a bow, and our timekeeper. And also Sophie White, who organized all of this tonight. Sophie, you're here someplace. Please don't hide. So again, thanks to everyone involved in National Science Week, the British Association for the Advancement of Science, thanks to The Guardian, thanks to Imperial College, thanks to you. And now here's Bernie having almost succeeded in the debate with a few words to cheer you up.
I asked for slow, but they wouldn't give it to me. Just a couple of things. We've all had a fabulous evening. We've thanked the speakers already. I'd like to thank Mark for setting it all up, doing everything. Great evening. Two other quick thank yous to Amy Thompson and Emma Powell from Events for all the ticketing, and also to the graduate school teams, though Sophie has done the bulk of the work.